Americans tell us why they think the price of gas has gone up so much. Gas prices. What impact have they had and why have they gone up so much? 18% of Americans tell us that they have created a hardship, the high price of gasoline. About half of Americans say they've had to adjust their spending, but not a hardship. And then there's a lucky third of Americans who say, hey, high price of gasoline, little impact at all on their lifestyles. Why has the price of gas gone up? Now, at the top of the list, to be sure, about a third of Americans right off the bat say it's because the oil companies are taking advantage of the consumer, gouging the consumer. Below that, what do we find? Well, some more sophisticated responses to the effect that we do not have the refining capacity in the United States to allow us to have cheap gas. Below that, the Middle East crisis and the war in Iraq causing the price to go up. Then increased supply and demand, Americans using too much gasoline. And number 5 on the list, government involvement, too much politics. Presumably that means keeping the supply of oil down or up or some other things along those lines. We can look at these answers by partisanship. We thought maybe Republicans would be much less likely to say oil companies are gouging the consumer, since Republicans traditionally are more associated with big business, but that's not the case. Very little difference between Republicans and Democrats in the percent mentioning that explanation. Where do we find the difference? Well, we isolated the percent of these two political groups who said that it was because of the war in Iraq or things going on in the Middle East. Democrats a little more likely to blame the war than Republicans. Finally, how high will it go? Almost 6 out of 10 Americans are convinced that the price of gasoline will reach $4 per gallon by the time the summer is over. If you put premium in your tank and live in certain areas of the country, that's not far away at all. Some people are already paying $3.60, $3.70 a gallon for gas, so $4 seemingly is something that's going to be reached at least some places in the U.S. this summer. What about $5 a gallon? Are Americans so pessimistic that they think that's where the price of gas will end up? No, very few Americans think it will go that high. I guess that is a little ray of optimism, a little ray of hope from the American public. Tomorrow on the Daily Briefing, what would you say to President Bush about Iraq if you had 15 minutes with him in the Oval Office? We'll tell you what Americans say. I'm Frank Newport, editor-in-chief of the Gallup poll with Democracy on Demand. Take the Daily Briefing with you. Search for Gallup at the iTunes Music Store.